Good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And you have myself, Stephen George. Very good evening.
It's Sunday the 29th of June 2014, and I've seen Superman fly, but I've never seen Steve fly as fast as he has just come in the door. Talk about a minute ago.
My backside literally touched the seat as I pressed the button to go. So yeah. Sorry. I've got a note from my parents and my grandparents.
Good stuff. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. Right, let's find out what the communication channels are, Steve.
Okay, Mary, communication channels, please.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
046 927 1212 is the phone number you'll get us on this evening. We also have the chat room on the website as well. That's oymradio.com if you want to navigate your way there. On the left hand side you will see the live chat button. You can press that, you can log in, and you can join in the festivities over there in the chat room. There's a free drink for everyone. You can also post questions there this evening for our guest and also for ourselves. Alan.
Right, Steve. Oh, it's going to be one of them shows, I think. Okay, no worries. Right, our guest on tonight is a legend in the alternative media side of things, Jim Marrs, and we do have a couple of announcements to make, but what we said is we're going to get Jim on straight away because he's actually on the phone. The old Skype didn't work, so he's on the phone, and so we said we'd get Jim on straight away and we get talking to him because there's been a lot going on, as you know, globally, especially over in the Middle East, and I'm sure Jim has had his finger on the pulse and finding out what's going on, and I'm sure he has loads of information to tell us. So without further ado, we'll get Jim straight in. Good evening, Jim. How are you?
I'm lovely.
Excellent. Listen, Jim, thanks a lot for coming on. This is your second visit to Open Your Mind Radio. This evening is a bit of a mad panic with everything going on, but we got there in the end. I know you're on the handset there rather than the Skype, but again, thanks for coming on. Without going into too much detail, Jim, because we did cover your kind of background in the last show, do you want to kind of give us a quick 5 minutes heads up on, just for people who don't know you or haven't listened to the last show, just a background of your history and how long you've been involved in the alternative media and your involvement in it?
Well, I haven't always been in the alternative media. For most of my life, I was part of the corporate establishment media. I'm just an old Texas newspaper reporter. Got a degree in journalism back in the 60s. And I've worked for a number of Texas newspapers. And then beginning about the 80s, I'm sorry, I got a 5-year-old granddaughter raising Cain over here.
I know exactly what that's like, Jim. That's why I was late this evening. I have a daughter who's raising hell before I left the house.
Anyway, I'm just an old reporter, but I'm not stupid, and I keep up with what's going on. I live through a lot of things. For example, I was dancing in Jack Ruby's Carousel Club even before the Kennedy assassination and before Jack Ruby's name got so prominent. And I've just kind of been on the sidelines watching everything transpire ever since then, and it's been a slow degradation of my country, the United States. Most everybody realizes and admits that we're just not at the same country we were in the 1960s. And I think the only thing that the reason that you probably want to classify me in the alternative media is that unlike a lot of people, I don't think the situation that we have in the world today, whether in Ireland or whether in the United States, I don't think this is just sheer happenstance. It isn't like just stuff happens and here we are. I think there's a plan. It's been planned out and worked out by the very top of the financial pyramid. I think that there are people with the international banking institutions who are working this plan, and the plan is to try to destroy the sovereignty of the nations and instead bind them all together in one big socialist bloc that has come to be known as the New World Order, as has been cited by George Herbert Walker Bush. He talked about the New World Order. I think Obama has mentioned the New World Order, and even Adolf Hitler talked about the New World Order. And I think this is what's happening, and it's an order that is based on the golden rule. Okay. Whoever has the gold makes the rules.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Jim, if you go back to when you first got involved in this and started to open up and realize what's going on, and how do you see it panning out? How do you see things the way they are now compared to, say 30 or 40 years ago, when, predictions were this is what they're going to do? And, I mean, do you think that they're still on plan, on the money, they're behind, or they're ahead of themselves?
Well, I think they're kind of behind. In fact, I think they're kind of, it's all falling apart. And I think the reason for that is because 30 years ago, there were only certain conventional major sources of information, both radio, television, and print. And today, thanks to the Internet, there are people all over the world that are connecting. And some of their old ploys, borrow more money, let's go to war, blah, 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 it's not working as well for them today as it once was.
Okay, and do you think that with everything that's going on, I mean, we'll get into the Middle East and obviously talking about the States and everything else, but do you see light at the end of the tunnel for the alternative media or for people in general that, because you do talk about the mass awakening, and the one thing they fear is people waking up to what's going on, and there seems to be the consciousness of the planet seems to has changed, and a lot of people are beginning to wake up on all different levels.
Oh, I totally agree. And that's exactly right. In fact, at least in the United States, I'm not sure what the situation would be there in the UK, but in the United States, the alternative media is rapidly becoming the mainstream media because the usual mass media, the TV networks and some of the satellite networks, they're losing audiences. Newspapers are folding right and left for lack of readership. And people are turning again to the Internet and to alternative media for information. And I've seen it here recently. Things happen. For example, the incident at the Bundy Ranch out in Nevada. Originally the mainstream media was not even covering it, and then when they started covering it, it was like, well, this guy won't pay his taxes, and he's trying to be some kind of right-wing idiot. But the alternative media was actually there, and they had their camcorders and their cell phone cameras, and they were recording everything that was going on, and people around the country responded and eventually made the federal officers back off.
Yeah, exactly. We heard about the Bundy Ranch, and it was great to see them backing off of what was going on and people standing up against the actual system. And I don't know whether you know, Jim, something that we're going to be talking about later anyway, is that there's a couple of alternative media sites over here that do television broadcasting. Well, not television broadcasting. They do a show and on video, and then they put the video up on YouTube. And it was in the UK, not in Ireland, but we're in Ireland, but in the UK. And what they're doing now is they're trying to shut them down and saying that they are like a broadcast entity, they're a broadcast channel, and they should be regulated. And obviously what's happening is that people are going to start fighting that as well. This is what the New World Order are doing, or for want of a better word, the powers to be, because they, as you say quite rightly, a lot of people in America, we've heard a lot of TV channels are losing their audience. Most of the people watching, I believe, are 55 or over. All the younger audience is just not interested.
That's true, and that's why, again, this gets back to the consciousness raising that you were speaking of. I think that a lot of young people today, whether consciously or maybe at a subconscious level, realize that they're just getting propagandized by the mainstream media, and it turns them off, and they don't listen to it anymore.
Yeah, totally. And as you say, with the newspapers as well, and I'm sure it's the same over here. I mean, more and more people are beginning to realise that the mainstream media, or there's certain kind of pet names people have. They call it the lamestream media, or they're even called the alternative media because they're not telling the truth. I like the term prostitutes. Yes, very good. Yeah, prostitutes. Yeah, exactly, because they will say.
And you know what? Here's what's funny, because at one time I was president of the press club in Fort Worth, Texas, major city, and being part of the media, and they would sit around the bar in their cups and say, we're just prostitutes. We just write what they tell us to write for our paychecks. And they would say that late at night in the bar. But then you go try to say today that they're prostituting their talents, and no. They won't accept that in the light of day.
And plus, they plagiarize quite a lot, apparently. They don't even do the research. They just rob somebody else's work and put it in and call it theirs.
Yeah, even worse than that. And what they're plagiarizing and what they're repeating is just the corporate handouts, press releases, And yes, a big part of the lamestream media's problems is they're just lazy. It's easier to take a press release from one of the giant corporations and maybe rewrite it slightly and then put it out as news than it is to go out and find out what's really going on.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you. What's your take on what's happening in the Middle East? Obviously, there's an awful lot going on over there with the Ukraine and with this new CIA-funded ISIS group, and it's quite obvious that it's funded by, CIA or one of them alphabet agencies anyway.
Well, I've been thinking about that, and to me it kind of falls into an either-or situation. Either this is some sort of plan unfolding by the New World Order globalists who want to just try to completely turn the Middle East into chaos, perhaps to gain total control over the oil and petroleum resources, or perhaps just to stir things up so they can continue to sell arms, or this is a sign that the New World Order globalist control is slipping. And but whatever it is, the United States has done a terrible job of trying to understand what's really happening and what the Middle East is all about, and giving those people a chance to actually try to take care of their own business. For example, so I don't have much good to say about Saddam Hussein, but he did hold that whole country together. And when we went in there, we mean the United States, in 2003, first thing we did was disband their army. The army, which was the only controlled force in the whole country. But then we did disbanded the army, but we didn't take their weapons away from them. So we were just immediately creating an underground, a rebellion, insurgents as they call them. And so and then now we get the Syrian ISIS guys, and we've been funding them. And so we've been creating these Frankenstein monsters. And now they turn on us.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously we talk about World War III, and one of the things that was said to us, and we don't know how genuine or how true this is, but we were told that because of the New World Order having their back against the wall, they need a World War III to do what they need to get their result. And there's other factions apparently involved, if you want to call them the White Dragon Society or the name, but there's, apparently there's people inside the system who are trying to stop things from happening, and this is the kind of the struggle that's going on. They're trying to push it, and other people are kind of, stopping them from doing that. Have you heard anything about, any, counterintelligence or people working from the inside to stop it from happening?
Well, that's the thing I've always wondered about is, you can point to certain individuals and show that they link together through secretive societies such as the Bilderbergers and the Council of Foreign Relations and the Royal Institute of International Affairs. And you know that those are the people working for the New World Order. And then, so the question becomes, and I think what you're asking there is, is there a counterbalance? Is there a force for good that's trying to stop the New World Order? And frankly, I haven't seen very much evidence that there is an organized effort to combat the New World Order, but all is not lost because I think there's an unorganized level. I think there's various groups and there's various individuals who have taken it upon themselves to try to see that the New World Order's plans, are not carried to fruition.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I can understand that. I assume that everybody who's on the inside probably some people do have a conscience and want to do something, and if they can't stop something, they might slow it down until something else happens.
Yeah, that's part of what you're saying. That's part of this consciousness raising. A lot of the people who are going along with the program did so because they just thought that was it. They haven't heard any other sides. But with this spread of information via the internet and this consciousness raising, yes, I think there are even people on the inside of the New World Order who are now beginning to question, wait a minute, what are we doing and what are our true motives? And yes, I think war is unfortunately a very real possibility because this is what they've used throughout history. When they got in trouble and when their power structure was threatened, well, then they'd just go to war because, during wartime, all bets are off, all freedoms are off. It's time to just work for the war effort. And but they've been having a hard time. In fact, I find it quite ironic right now that, for the last 15 years or more over here in the United States, they've been trying to get us to go into a war against Iran. And now I'm reading where the United States, John Kerry and Secretary of State, is now dealing and talking with Iran about possibly allying against ISIS. So, how ironic is that?
But they're funding ISIS. Yeah,
right.
I mean, exactly.
Right.
No, what we heard is that what they want to do is, first of all, they need to go into Syria. They need to get Syria. Now, Syria and Iran have a pact to protect each other, but they want to take Syria out. And when they take Syria out, then they'll go into Iran. So for them to be talking to Iran, it seems very strange.
Yeah, it does. But maybe that's it. The idea is to sow dissension. And if they could get Iran where we could move into Syria without worrying about the involvement of Iran, then that would certainly suit their purposes.
Yeah, exactly. The obviously what's going on in the Middle East, we've heard that the Straits of Hormuz is very important as well, and if that closes down, that's really going to have a massive impact on everything because a lot of the shipping goes through there. Now, we heard from John Irwin, who's a super soldier and has been on the show before, and he said, as an ex-military man, he feels that when that shuts down, that's the warning sign to start, stocking up on goods because it's going to be a while before that opens up again based on what's going on. Have you heard anything similar to that?
Right. Well, I think that, of course, that makes sense. The oil, for example, that's coming out of the Middle East, that's got to keep flowing. That's the thing, actually, the business commercial end of the thing is what's probably keeping us out of war right now, is that everybody wants the business to continue. I'll tell you another thing, a strange thing that comes about is if you go back and study the report from Iron Mountain. This was a report done. Henry Kissinger was involved in it and this was back done about 1962 or so, during the Kennedy administration, and Kennedy actually was trying to work for an end to the Cold War and an era of world peace. And so they had this study done about, well, you know, war is so profitable, how and it's also a controlling aspect of society. I mean, the largest the rationale for controlling the population is, you know, providing for the common defense. And so they want to know what, you know, what alternatives are there. You know, how can we keep social cohesion without war? And basically, what they concluded is that you can't. You really need war to maintain our systems of governments. But what's really interesting is they said if we do not have war amongst ourselves, then we must, then perhaps the next step would be banding the humans together to fight off a threat from space, some sort of alien invasion, I guess, whether real or imagined. And you might recall that President Reagan went before the United Nations and said, you know, what if there was a threat from space, and all the nations then would then work together. You know, so I think this is something we have to be aware of, because this may be one of their next ploys. The German rocket scientist, Werner von Braun, I have met with his Carol Rosin, who was head of Fairchild's Industry and worked with Dr. Brown, and she was telling me that at one point he said that, and this was years ago, this was back during the Cold War, and he said that the Cold War, the threat between the communist East and the capitalist West, he said it was all phony. He said that was just, you know, an artificial setup to keep the power entrenched. And he told her that when the communism, international communism, was no longer the big boogaboo, that next would come international terrorism, probably out of the Middle East. Well, here we are. And he said, then he told her, he said, but that's all going to be funny too. And he says, and then when that doesn't work, he said, it'll be a threat from space.
Yeah, we have Carol is actually a good friend. Dr. Carol Rosin is a good friend of OYM's, and Carol's been on the show, and as you said, Jim, she said the same thing, Werner von Braun, and it was called, they called it Project Bluebeam, and
right.
They would use their own technology and holographic technology to fool people into thinking, because when people have had enough of war, and they say, right, enough's enough, that's it, no more on the planet, they need something else. So they will, it's like the movie Independence Day. That's exactly what they'll do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what I think, you know, what will happen. Now, where do you think Russia and China is in what's going on?
Well, what they're now calling the BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia,
India and China, yeah.
India, China, yes. Well, see, these are the only nations that they don't have firmly in hand under their banking system.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that can cause them a lot of problems. So that's why most of those nations are vilified in the media, and we talk about, you know, any of the little nations that don't fall into line economically then become the enemy nations. What I find really, really interesting is that again, we're getting convoluted information about all of this stuff. We don't really know what the truth of the matter is, but I find it very ironic that the Russians, who, you know, through my lifetime, first they were our wonderful allies in World War II, and then all of a sudden they were the deadly enemy of the world communist, you know, threat, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, they threw that off, and now they're really good folks again, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh no, we got to watch out for them, and so it's just back and forth. And yet, I think the thing that gets me by trying to stand off and get objective about it is that if you stop and think about it, it was Russia who effectively killed the Cold War by just saying, okay, that's it, you won, and we're going home. And they said, they got to the Western nations and said, if you'll promise you won't expand NATO, we'll go ahead and pull our troops out of Eastern Europe. And they did. Nobody forced the Russians out of Eastern Europe. They voluntarily withdrew. And I think that shows me that they were sincere in trying to find a peaceful resolution to the Cold War. And what have we done? We've ringed them with NATO bases and tried to push NATO on into the Ukraine, into the Crimea, and into these other places where we pledged we were not going to do that. So it makes me wonder, who's really the good guys and who's really the bad guys.
Yeah, America is not looking good at the moment. Well, I won't say America. There's the handful of oligarchs who are running the show. Obama being a puppet.
Let's differentiate between peoples and governments.
Yeah.
I've pretty much traveled around the world. I've been everywhere from Tibet and China to Europe and Africa, and people around the world basically are good folks, and they just want to live and take care of their families and do well. But it's the leadership, and I don't know what the deal is. I don't know if being a psychopath is a necessary criteria for gaining leadership in a government, or whether the leadership in the government turns you into a psychopath. I don't know, but it's we really had more than our share of idiots.
Well, psychopaths and sociopaths lack empathy, so the fact that maybe that's a trait that they look for, Jim, where if you actually lack empathy, you'll actually climb the ladder because you won't give a damn about anybody except yourself.
That's probably true. That's probably a very astute observation, and I think it's obviously psychopaths tend to go into politics and tend to do well because, as you said, they don't care. They don't care if they're hurting other people. They don't care, if they even kill everybody off, as long as they take care of their inner drives.
Definitely, I think that's definitely going on. And as you say, let's differentiate between the people of America who probably, as you say, just want to get on and live and do what they need to do and do what they want to do. And then obviously people are looking at America and seeing all this going on and think, what are the Americans going on? But again, it's just a group of oligarchs over there who are running the system. And, maybe that, what happened at the Bundy Ranch on a bigger level needs to happen in America. I mean, we've heard about the Department of Homeland Security, buying up all the bullets and the FEMA camps being set up over there. And I don't know what they're expecting. We'll be going to a musical break in about 2 minutes. But I don't know, what's your take on the whole DHS and the FEMA thing?
Oh, the FEMA camps?
Yeah.
Well, they exist in that, and a lot of them are just former military bases that you're told officially have been closed, and yet if you go visit these bases, they have caretaker people there keeping them up and keeping the fences up, keeping the things up, and so these are camps just waiting to happen. I think they have to move carefully in the United States because we have a history of individual freedom and liberty. That's what this whole country was founded on. And then we have the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, which is the legal precedent for this individual freedom and liberty. But I think the thing that's really kept us free so far is guns. We have guns. And I guarantee you, speaking to you here from Texas, there's a lot of people in Texas that if they try to push too hard, they're going to make the Bundy Ranch look like a Sunday school picnic.
Yeah, well, see, you're lucky that you actually have guns because we don't, and a lot of countries, obviously, in Europe don't have guns. And the fact that you have guns is one way to actually protect yourself and protect your family. But We have a phone call just coming in. I don't know whether Steve... Okay, we just have a general call coming in there. But you can protect yourself, which is brilliant. I mean, we'd love to be able to do that with what's going on over here in Ireland and the UK, and I'm sure across Europe. But the problem is that we can't get our hands on guns. So as John Moore always says on the John Moore Show, keep your guns and make sure you have bullets and everything else, because that'll be the last line of defence. If you don't have them, then you've lost.
That's true, and all you have to do is go back and look at history, and you find that whether it's Pol Pot or whether it's Hitler or any number of dictators, Mao, you find that one of their first steps is to register guns, and then the next step is to confiscate guns, take them all up for real or even imagined reasons. And then once the civilian population is disarmed, then you have total control over them, because there's no way they can stand up and say no. Exactly, because guns don't kill people, people kill people. Jim, we're going to take the first musical break, and Jim, I know you're a bit of a rebel, and we have a few American rebel songs which you like, so we've downloaded a few songs which you might like. So we'll start off with, what's the first one, Steve? Oh, sorry.
Turn my mic on, man. Turn my mic on. The first one is Deep in the Heart of Texas by Bundy.
Right, shoot away, and we'll get to questions after the musical break. So bear with us, Jim. We'll just get the music playing there. You can sit back and have a listen to this. I'll listen here in the heart of Texas.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Yeehaw, the good old boys. Whereas we're just dancing around the studio here. Bundy, Deep in the Heart of Texas, especially for Jim Mars.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, we're going to go over to, we have a good few questions that's come in, so I'm going to pass over to Steve, Jim, and Steve's going to go through the questions with you.
All right.
Okay, Jim, a couple of questions here. The first one came in from Jerry, and Jerry was wondering, does Jim consider the phrase New World Order, is it really a misnomer? As in fact, Jerry says, it is still the old Anglo-American / British Empire still operating.
Jerry, you hit the nail on the head. That's a good one, because yes, basically that's right. The New World Order actually is just the old world order, and they are really strongly trying to maintain their positions of power and strength, and this is why they're after all this money. See, they're not really at the very top. They already have most of the money, so it's not really about money. It's about power. It's about who's going to control. And yes, you're right. This is the old hierarchy that's been there now for several hundred years, and they're still trying to hold on.
So maybe we should just refer to them as the old world order, because maybe if we keep referring to them as the new world order, we're obviously giving them power just by that statement alone, referring to them as something new. Maybe
we just need to refer to them as disorder.
Disorder, yeah. Good choice.
That this comes back to one of the mottos of the Masons, which is, order out of chaos.
Yeah.
And, of course, before you can have your order and out of chaos, you have to create chaos.
And God knows they're creating enough of that worldwide.
Yeah. It's worldwide, yeah. That's right.
Jim, Chris is wondering, can you ask Jim, in his opinion, and that's in your opinion, who in the disclosure movement / circus are for real and who are disinfo agents?
Well, you can't tell a player without a program, and unfortunately I don't think there's a program. And I would never even dare to try to go down a list of people in the UFO community, the conspiracy community, and say, well, now this person's good and legit, and this person's, a government troll, and this one's some kind of agent. Number one, you can't do that, and that gets so subjective. Unfortunately, in a lot of these communities, if somebody argues with you and disagrees with you, then they're automatically put into the government agent camp, which is not necessarily true. So I think you just have to be balanced, and you have to study the various personalities involved. And I don't know, for me at least, it doesn't take me very long to figure out which ones are trying to impart information and are not demanding any particular belief, as opposed to those who obviously have some sort of agenda and are trying to push some particular pet theory or some particular way of looking at things. You just have to be balanced, and you have to study all sides of the issue, and then start asking yourself, well, what is this person's agenda? And is he trying to push off something? The other thing too is how much of the information that you receive from someone, how much of that is borne out by listening to other people? In other words, if one person says, the aliens are 6 foot tall and blue and they're coming to get us, and nobody else says that, then I think you have to take that with a big grain of salt. But if they say something and you've got a lot of other people too who are not necessarily connected to them, and they're saying the same thing, then you can kind of start putting some credence in that information.
I totally agree with
In other words, you just have to think for yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Jim. Cross-reference everything, I think, as you say, and make sure that the contacts don't know each other. One of the things that, again, John Irwin, who was a super soldier, said to us is that they put it's like if they're putting the truth in the barrel full of lies, it's very hard to find it. That's
right. And unfortunately, to do this halfway successfully, I think you have to have some experience. This thing that bothers me about the Internet is that, the upside of the Internet is that anybody has access to the Internet. But the downside is anybody and everybody has access to the Internet. So if you're, say, like a young person, and you haven't had a lot of experience, then you're kind of caught because you've got all these conflicting stories and issues and comments on the Internet, and how do you know who to believe and who not to believe? And unfortunately, I think the answer to that is that it just takes some time. You have to have some experience, and you have to study a lot of different things, and then you can begin to kind of see through some of the agendas that are in play on the Internet. For one thing, you always want to know what's the source. It's easy for anybody to put something up on the Internet and claim something or make some kind of statement. And so you always have to ask yourself, well, who's saying that, and why would they be saying that? For example, if you get some guy who you hear, and he's got all kinds of credentials, and he says nuclear power is perfectly safe, you go, wow, here's an expert, really knows what he's talking about. But then you research and you check and you Google him and you find out that, this guy is the head of the Atomic Industrial Forum, which is a pro-nuclear industry organization. Well, then you know where he's coming from.
Exactly. And how do you deal, obviously you've been involved for a long time, Jim, so, I'm sure you don't suffer fools gladly, and you have a lot of experience and a way to discern people, as you were saying. You have a filtering system, inbuilt filtering system. How do you deal with people? How do you wake people up yourself? What's your approach to it?
I like to ask people questions just to get their mind to thinking. If you try to argue with people, lots of times they just bow their back, and then they harden their position, and they're going to oppose you just to oppose you, not because of the argument. So I find that asking questions is always good. For example, one time I was making an airplane flight, and I was accosted by one of the TSA agents. He wants to grope me and pat me down, and he wants me to go through the body scanning machine and blah, 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 and I looked at him, gave him a big, nice smile, and said, hey, answer me this. I said, I think you guys are doing a great job for security, but how come you're not doing this down on the border where they're letting illegals slip across the border by the thousands every day? And he stopped and he blinked and he looked at me and then he went, I wondered that myself. So see, here's a guy's part of the machine and he's even wondering about what's going on. Another question you might ask people, is if we're certainly like look at the United States and we supposedly are in this death struggle with terrorism, with these terrorists and we've got to stop them from slipping weapons of mass destruction into our country. Well, okay, if that's true, how come they're not guarding the border? they're not,
Yeah. No, I know what you mean, because we've heard about the actual kind of, I won't say open border policy, but there's been a lot of people coming over the border. I'm just going to pass over to Steve. He has more questions for you. We have more listeners popping in questions there on our chat room. Steve?
Jim, Mick at Liffey Sound is wondering, can you ask Jim if he knows anything about Benjamin Fulford's claims that there is a war going on between the so-called Illuminati in the West and the White Dragon Society in the East, who want to make a benevolent world that is truly free? Any opinions on this, please?
Well, there's several things going on there. Benjamin Fulford and his material is one thing, and I've been keeping up with that since he kind of broke away from conventional journalism and began offering himself as a kind of a front man or a spokesman for the White Dragon Society. That's another case of where here's somebody who's telling us this information, and yet there seems to be scant independent evidence of any of this going on. Although I personally do believe that there is some internal struggles going on within the New World Order, and I think there probably are. There's circles within the circles, and sometimes they operate in concert, and sometimes they operate against each other. And then also, as we mentioned earlier, I think there are some people who have been working for the New World Order who are beginning to have second thoughts about what they're doing and what their true purposes are and how that's going to affect humanity on this planet. But now, Benjamin Fulford, that's a good case in what we were just talking about how do we know, how do we prove up this stuff? And the answer is actually, you don't. Again, I've been keeping up with that material and his writings for a long time now, but they still remain in what I call my file.
That's a good way to call it, yeah.
And what I do with things in my file is that you get this bit of information, you go, and then you don't reject it out of hand because you don't know it. Maybe that's true, but then you don't accept it wholeheartedly either because, again, you don't know if that's true. So I just put it in my file it away, and then keep watching to see, if anything happens to support all that. And interestingly enough, there has been, if you'll go back to when Benjamin Fulford, and there's a few others who are talking about this pushback by the White Dragon Society, and the fact that, they're going to see that some of these top bankers get their comeuppance and, these things are going to happen. And then all of a sudden you start reading these little news items, say like just from the first of this year, about all these fairly high-level bankers that have all committed suicide, jumped off of buildings, got run over. And it's like, it's almost like that goes beyond sheer coincidence, so that that tends to indicate that maybe this interdicting warfare is indeed going on.
Well, this is it. There is a Facebook page called 2012 Cabal Arrests, and I'm subscribed to it, and they do post up things on there just in the news. And one of the things they have done over the year was to post up these inverted commas or bunny's ears quotes, the suicides of bankers. And there's been quite a lot of them especially this year. And as you say, Jim, you have to ask yourself, is that coincidence or is there something else going on?
Right. Well, I always try to reduce things down to either or. This is either a sign that the global economic system is falling apart, and some of these people realize it, and it makes them despondent enough to commit suicide, or they might be in a position to reveal the truth about the manipulation that's going on in our economic system, which means that they are taken out and by means that are made to appear to be suicide.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to pass you over to Steve. We have more questions coming in there, Steve.
Yeah, they're coming in over the wire, Jim, quick and fast. Chris is wondering, he said he's read your book, Alien Agenda, and he can appreciate it's a very tricky issue, but can Jim, in as few words as possible, explain what the alien agenda is?
Well, I think it's easier to explain what the alien agenda is not, and that is an Independence Day type invasion, destruction, blowing up cities, blowing up bases and stuff like that. And I say that because if that was the game plan, I think they certainly would have done it long before now. They would have done it because if you go and look into the UFO issue, it didn't start in 1947. It goes all the way back. You can go back to biblical times. The flying things in the sky, and you go back even before the Bible to the flying dragons of the ancient Chinese, to the flying boats that are mentioned by the ancient Egyptians. And in fact, then you go all the way back to the Sumerian civilization, which predates the Egyptians by thousands of years. And you find that they've written down on their stone tablets, their cuneiform, that, they were given civilization by the Anunnaki, those who came from the stars and came to the earth. And then you go and you check and you find out that that same general story is held by ancient peoples all across the globe, Aborigines in Australia to the ancient Chinese, the Aztecs, the Mayans. They all have stories of gods who came from the skies and gave them the knowledge to do some things. So, if they've been here all in our history, then, why would they wait until we have space travel and laser beams and, modern technology to try to attack us? They could have done it years ago when all we had to face them with was swords or spears. So I don't think that we have to really be deeply concerned about some invasion from space. And in fact, if all of a sudden the mass media starts telling us, oh my God, there really are aliens and they're really here and they want to eat you, and give up the last of your freedoms and liberties so that we can protect you. I wish people would stop and think and maybe not fall for that.
Well, the psychology, Jim, apparently is that, as we said, people are going to get fed up with wars on the planet, so they need the next phase, and the next phase is this fake alien invasion, because what they'll say is, again, a problem, reaction, solution, the Hegelian dialectic, and what they'll say is that, we need money from you to build these guns and these weapons and these lasers so we can fight these aliens, and we need to charge you more tax so we can get the money to build them.
Exactly. But I think the main thing is that, okay, what little freedom you may have, you need to give that up so that we can protect you from the threat from space.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this is why we need to be waking people up and getting to, on whatever level, the consciousness of the planet has has increased tremendously, and thanks to the internet. I think their plans were to use the internet really from a propaganda point of view, but obviously it backfired. But later on, Jim, we have a second guest on later on, and the chap is Brian Gerrish. I don't know whether you know Brian from UK Column, and UK Column were actually closed down. Well, they choose to close it down because they were trying to be regulated, and what they're doing now, Jim, in the UK with Brian, and obviously they're going to do it in the UK and obviously the rest of the countries, and maybe in the States as well, is that they're going to say that if you do a video, do it like an interview, and you put it up on YouTube, and it looks like a proper broadcast video, then they'll shut you down because you have to be regulated. And we're going to be talking to Brian about that probably in about half hour or so, and we're going to get a heads up because it's just recently happened. So we're going to get a heads up on what's been going on. But
I would hope you people will resist regulating the airways, and I realize that as well as anybody that sometimes it's kind of disquieting to hear things that you don't want to hear and hear information that you don't really want to know or disagree with, et cetera, but I guarantee you the free flow of information is the only thing that will actually make people free.
Yeah, we have to get the information out there, and one thing, Jim, I don't know, I think we'll just get your take on it, but sometimes people say to us, well, are we not talking about fear porn? Is it not, it's all negative information? And I'm going, well, what we do is we try and find, at the end of the session, we try and talk about solutions, but myself and Steve perceive the information as just information, and that's it. If your belief system sees it as fear porn, well, then it is. But my belief system might just see it as information. Do you think that's a good approach?
Exactly. That's exactly right. It's in the mind of the beholder. If information makes you fearful, then you're just fearful. But I think I'm with you. If I'm a whole lot less fearful over things I know about, no matter how bad they are, than I am over things that I don't even know about. If we're out walking in the forest and we hear rustling in the bushes, you might get fearful because you don't know what it is. But once you find out what it is, another hiker or even a bear, at least you know what it is, and then that's not as fear-inspiring.
Exactly. Steve, you have more questions come in there for
I do. If I heard rustling in the bushes and it was a bear, I'd be afraid.
Yeah, but at least once you know what it is, you know what you can do something about it. Climb a tree, run away.
I just hope I could outrun that bear. I don't think I could. Jim, whatever is wondering, can you ask Jim about Edward Snowden and the reveal info about the alien agenda, or was that a hoax? I'm not sure if that's clear.
Well, now, are you talking about Snowden or are you talking about Gary McKinnon?
No, he definitely says Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden revealed information about an alien agenda, or supposedly released information of an alien agenda. Right.
Well, what's wild is that when the Snowden's information first started becoming public, there were so many people that were just going, oh, no, that can't be. But now we know that so much of what he said has been proven to be true. I think we need to take all that very seriously. Unfortunately, like here in the United States, there's still just a big squabble over Snowden. Is he a traitor or is he a hero whistleblower? And they get arguing over that, and we kind of lost sight of what he's trying to tell us. In fact, they say they're still working. The Obama administration is still working on regulations and trying to clean up this mass spying, except nothing's really being done. In fact, that the secret FISA court just got through extending the mandate that allows them to just blanketly listen in on every phone call. It used to be at one point it was only the transatlantic calls or out of the international calls that were being monitored, and now we know they're monitoring everybody. So here's a case of where we know what's going on, and Snowden's revelations have been verified, and yet what actually has been done about it, not much.
Yeah, well, from what I've read here, it just said from one of our listeners' agent, Snowden was on the mainstream media. Enough said. You see, I know Snowden can come out with information, but again, as Alan said, information, it's just information. You know, I'll see what resonates with me. Alan will see what resonates with him, as will everyone. I wouldn't believe everything that Edward Snowden says because I don't know the man. I don't know what side of the fence he's on. I don't know who he's working for. I don't know who gives him his paycheck. You know, so I mean, at the end of the day, I would view his information, you know, as just that information. And if I had one of those files, that's exactly where I'd be putting that because, you know, you just don't know.
Yes, I totally agree. That's exactly what it is. But like I said, so much of what he said has now been borne out as being true. And when you say who's he working for and maybe was he put up to this and is there an angle of that, there's always that possibility. So again, you just have to put your belief system in abeyance and wait to see how it all shakes out. And then, of course, there's also this, that, you know, he was simply copying down and making and storing away a lot of this internal NSA message traffic, and you never know, you know, how much of that to trust, you know. Just because somebody sends an inter-office memo doesn't mean it's true, right?
Exactly, yeah.
You want to, Mick is keen to find out about the JFK. Do you want to do that question?
Yep. That's next on the list. Yeah, Jim, this is kind of taking a different turn, and it's kind of going back a ways. But Mick, again, is wondering, can you ask Jim about the theory that the JFK kill shot was taken from a storm drain beside the curbside on Dealey Plaza?
Well, I'm going to have to say that's in my hunt file. There was a storm drain there. I've even been down in it myself, and I'm kind of a short guy, so I could stand down there, and then you look up through the slit there where the water comes pouring in, and you're right there at the curbside, and you're less than 6 feet away from where Kennedy would be sitting in his car, so it's perfectly possible to do something like that. I've also had some of the witnesses that indicate there may have been a shot from that area. So I'm certainly not going to write that off and say, no, that's just impossible. But on the other hand, again, there's not enough, I think, hard evidence to say that was the case. I think the main thing to understand about the Kennedy assassination, though, is that it was either one lone nut and kind of an accident of history, or there was more than one person involved, more than one shooter involved, and therefore it was a big conspiracy, and it's been covered up for 50 years. And I think anyone who's done just the most elementary homework on that case would agree that it's a big conspiracy and it's been covered up. And in fact, the key to it is not so much who shot Kennedy. The question is who had the power to cover up this crime. And now you're talking about the federal government of the United States, which turns what at that time was technically only another Texas homicide into a national coup d'etat.
Yeah, we had a couple of people on the show. Jim Fretzer was on the show, and we were talking to Jim about that, and that's an interview in itself. Well, I'll tell you what, Jim, we're going to go off to a second musical break now for you. Again, one of the rebel songs from the States there. Steve, you want to tell us which one it is there?
Yes. It's Union Mayor and the Confederate Grey something or other. Isn't it just, yeah?
Well, we'll be back after this anyway.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com. Okay,
and we're back. Sorry for that little break in transmission. I think the CIA or the FBI or somebody out there is trying to interfere with us, but we won't be stopped. And we're back.
We'll carry on.
With Jim Mars.
We have about 10-15 minutes left, so let's go off to the questions. You have one there from Karen, Steve.
Yes, we do. We have a question here from Karen Quinn Tostado of the United We Strike Marathon. And Karen's question is, can you ask Jim if he has any comments on the recent immigration problems in the United States, and that possibly those who are of draft age will be granted citizenship to sign up and be ready to fire on Americans when the excrement hits the fan.
Well, yes, but my response is not going to be very politically correct. First, you have to understand that I have no problem with anyone from any part of the world coming to the United States and going through the process of trying to become a citizen. I think I could see that, and I could see that a lot of people would like to get out of some of these third world poor countries and come here, and I welcome everybody, but you need to do it legally, okay? Otherwise, it's like, well, I've heard the analogy that it's like, let's say you have a very high dollar season pass seat at for the football games, you know, and then you pay all that money, and then when you show up, there's somebody else sitting in your seat. You know, if that happens in real life, then you get an usher, and they go and say, "Sorry, you know, this is not your seat," and they make a move. It's the same thing here. They want to come to the United States. They want to slip in illegally, and then partake of the benefits and the welfare and the government assistance and whatever else it takes. That the people who are actually paying for it and have bought a ticket, that they get to enjoy. And I'm just sorry, but I don't think that's right. The thing that's happening right now really bothers me. They estimate there's like 47,000 children. They call them children, but they're 14 to 17 to 18 years old. A lot of them are hardly children, but they are all have been coming into the United States, and of course, when they get in here, then they're going to be applying for welfare. They're going to be applying for the right to vote, and there's politicians now that are trying to give them the right to vote. So, in other words, they're getting a good seat in the stadium, and they don't have to pay for it. And it's just not right from the standpoint of the people that do have to pay for it. But the thing that really bothers me is that we're hearing about all of these young people that are coming across the border. But a lot of them don't even come from Mexico. They come from Guatemala, and they come from Central America, South America. Well, how are they getting here? You know, if they're broke, destitute kids on the street, how do they get from here to there? Well, they're being brought in by the trainload using the Mexican railroads. And there's a lot of people who suspect that this is a concerted effort to dilute the voting base in the United States. We already have a problem in that there's more people voting for a living than working for a living. In other words, the statistics show that there's more people in the United States today who are drawing their income from the government than there are those who are paying taxes and paying into the government. Now, how long can that continue?
Well, I heard something, and I don't know how true this is, Jim, that the people who will come across the border or get in from different countries will be the people that they'll be looking at for becoming police and, you know, the likes of, you know, people in authority, because, you know, say they're not highly educated, they'll just be kind of conditioned to do what they're told and won't really argue. They just, you know, be I won't say dumbed down, but they'll be easy to manipulate because they're not kind of, you know, cognitive
right.
thinkers, you know.
Yes, I've heard that. In fact, apparently they're already beginning to put that process in place, because I'm not sure if they've actually passed the legislation, but I know it's been proposed that anyone from a foreign country who comes and serves in the U.S. military gets automatic citizenship. Well, there you go. So now you staff the military with a lot of foreigners, and if the orders come down to go into an American city and take weapons and shoot anybody who resists, you know, are they going to follow orders, or are they going to be loyal to the Constitution? Leave that answer up to you.
Yeah, we got the same really over here. Just rumors again. You put it in the hot file, as you say, and
Yeah.
you know they know that the own military, say the Irish Army, probably won't shoot or they won't attack their own Irish people. So what they do is they'll send the Irish Army over to, say, France, and then send the French Army over to Ireland, and that way there's no kind of loyalty.
Exactly. That's the plan for the United Nations actions. You know, because you're going to have a hard time getting indigenous military people to fire on their own people.
Exactly. Jim, we've reached that time. Is there any quick questions that you have there for Jim?
Yes. I've got three quick questions, Jim. I'm going to just fire to them as quickly as I can. The first one on the list is, do you reckon it was possible that Jackie Onassis killed John F. Kennedy?
No.
No? Okay.
No, that didn't happen.
Okay. What do you think is going on?
And the reason for that is that could she have arranged something like that? Yes. But could she have covered the whole thing up and had control and power over the FBI, the Secret Service, the military, police agencies? No.
No, I didn't think so. Okay, next question, 2 of 3. Does Jim know what's going on up on the Apache Mount Graham with the Vatican astronomers?
Oh, well, the Vatican is right at the forefront of the UFO issue and has put out various statements showing that they understand that the truth that we are being visited by folks not from this planet. And so I think they're trying to set themselves up as possible the mediators between humanity and these visitors. And one of the things they're leading in are these observatories. They also have one in the South Pole. So, yeah, that's pretty interesting. And they have been more open to the UFO question than many of the other religions.
Okay, good answer. And the very last one, Jim, the MH370 plane that crashed, Howie is wondering, do you have any thoughts on that plane?
Yes, it seems to understand what happened to the 370, you have to understand what happened on 9/11. And on 9/11, when I heard that 4 separate airliners taken off from 4 separate airports with 4 separate hijack crews hitting for 4 separate targets, somehow were able to, all their transponders went off at the same time. And I thought, how is that possible? And so I found out even back then, I was aware of the Global Hawk technology, which is remote control aircraft, which we now know, you know, drones are the big thing we talk about now, and everybody knows that we're flying these pilotless planes over Afghanistan, over Iraq, being controlled from the ground thousands of miles away. What a lot of people still don't quite understand is that when you have an airplane that is controlled by computer, and most of the big wide-bodied Boeing jets are fly-by-wire, you can exteriorly access that computer, override the signals, and capture that computer, and then guide it to a safe landing anywhere you want to, or crash it into buildings, okay, as we saw on 9/11. And once you understand that this technology does exist, then you begin to look at the 370 flight a little bit differently, because we found out there's really never been any evidence that it crashed. In fact, we know that the pilot had a home computer with a flight simulator on it, and on there was several scenarios of landing at Diego Garcia, which is our most secret base there in the Indian Ocean. So I think what happened on 370 is that we know that of all those 200-something passengers, 20 of them belong to a company in Texas called Freescale. And Freescale had just developed some very advanced defense computer chips, possibly along the line of the stealth bombers and aircraft technology. And they were on their way to China. And I think that we found that Freescale was owned partially by the Carlyle Group, which is the Bush family, I think Henry Kissinger was involved in that, and early on the bin Laden family had a lot of interest in Carlisle. I understand they sold that. But, and I think they decided they didn't want this technology going to China, and yet if they landed anywhere and if they survived, then there's the people who know the technology and they could have spread it. So I think they captured that airplane either with or without the acquiescence of the pilot, and I think they flew it to Diego Garcia, flew it in under cover of night, put it in a hangar, and then nobody knows what happened to it. And I know recently I said that I was asked, well, what happened to the airplane? And it's this simple, folks. If you have a big 757, 777 jet, all you have to do is just repaint it and put new tail numbers on it, and you could fly it, all around, and who's to know that was the Flight 370?
Yeah, exactly. And you have the power and the technology to do that. Jim, we've reached that time in the evening, and a big thank you for coming online and staying with us. I know you've been on the phone there, and it's a long time being on the phone, so a big thank you for coming on. Before you go, I'm going to pass you over to Steve and let Steve take your details and for websites and everything else. But a big thanks again for all the time and all the work that you've put in to exposing what's going on. So just pass it over to you, Steve.
Yeah, I want to echo that as well, Jim. It's a pleasure and a privilege to have you on to speak with you one more time. And the information, as usual, is great. You're a man who's in demand, and we're just glad we had you on. And again, thanks for the time. Can you just throw out the website there for anyone who wants to find out more about Jim Marrs and your work, and maybe even give the book a plug as well there, Jim?
Yeah, anybody would like to catch up on all of my information, and it's all in my books: The Rule by Secrecy, Rise of the Fourth Reich, Alien Agenda, The $1 Trillion Conspiracy, and Our Occulted History. You can find those at my website, jimmarrs.com. That's JIMMARRS.com. Or, of course, go to Amazon or any big bookstore. If they don't have it right away, I'm sure they can get it quickly enough.
Brilliant stuff. All right, Jim, just stay with us there. We're going to go off to a musical break, and we'll be back after this with Brian Gerrish.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Hi, and now we're back. That was Jim Marrs, brilliant guest, brilliant information, and go to jimmarrs.com, I believe that's the website, and check out his new book. As I say, Jim's been in the business for such a long time, loads of information that he has, and it's great to have him on the show. Now, we had to I just contacted Brian Gerrish just before the show to see is Brian available, because some of you, one of the things we were going to talk about was the fact that UK Column being, I won't say approached, but being in contact with ATVOD, trying to shut them down. And it was one of the things on the list that we were going to talk about. And Brian kindly said, he rang us and said he'd be able to come on the show and tell us what's going on. So without further ado, we'll bring Brian in. Good evening, Brian. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm doing fine. Thanks very much.
Brian, do you want to kind of give us a heads up and let people know what's going on? For people who aren't aware what's happening, tell us what's happening with ATVOD and UK Column.
Right, okay. Well, first of all, the organisation is ATVOD, which is the authority for television on demand, and they approached us right at the beginning of February. They said they were investigating the UK Column as a service, and they were looking to see whether we had already committed breaches of their regulations. This was in relation to the Communications Act 2003, and in particular they were looking under Rule 1, which is the requirement to notify an on-demand programme service, Rule 4, the requirement to pay a fee, and Rule 11, a requirement to ensure that children will not normally see or hear material which might seriously impair their development. So this nasty little organisation, which of course is a private company, it's a limited company, is the right-hand man for Ofcom. Ofcom is obviously monitoring broadcast television, whereas ATVOD is looking at people that provide an on-demand service over the internet. So that's what happened. They came to us. They said they were investigating us. We challenged them, but by the 24th of April, they'd sent us a letter to say that they had reached a determination and that we were in breach of two rules. Rule 1, the requirement to notify an on-demand program service, and Rule 4, the requirement to pay a fee. Now, before I hand back to you, I'll just say that, of course, the other thing that ATVOD does is it monitors programs that are being put out. One of the things they monitor for is hate speech. But, of course, they don't fully define what the hate speech could be, so ATVOD could decide what that is. And the other thing is they alone make the decision as to what a TV-like program is. And in ATVOD's rule book, hardcore pornography is a television-like production. So that's the situation. We said we weren't going to play with these people. And so what we did is we took down our videos on YouTube, because that was the bit they said formed the on-demand service. So we have refused to engage with them, and we've pulled down our videos posted on YouTube. And in order to make the point to people, we've temporarily pulled our live broadcasts, because we wanted to get people to understand that this is absolutely the start of Cameron's government censoring the internet. And what does it mean? Well, it means that UK Column ultimately might not be on air, and anybody else who is posting videos to YouTube, even if it's from their bedroom, this organisation is now coming for them. There's no question of it.
What's their definition of video on demand?
Well, basically, a service which enables users to select individual programs from amongst the programs included in the service, to receive the selected program using an electronic communications network, and to view the selected program when the user chooses. Well, that's exactly what YouTube does.
Right, so that means that, well, should YouTube not be paying them a license to because at the end of the day, that's their service?
Well, a couple of people have actually sort of suggested that, but I think that's the wrong way to look at it. What we've got here is a private company, which is, I can tell you more about this, but we'll just keep it simple at the moment. This private company is deciding itself what constitutes TV-like programs, and they have been heavily involved, of course, with the BBC and other major broadcasters. They have cosy little discussions with them, but they alone decide what TV-like means, and you've got to be producing TV-like programs, but they also say that hardcore porn is TV-like. So nobody in their right minds would want to be regulated by this vicious little organisation, because they're already out of control. You have a group of some 9 directors who have all got huge vested interests in other companies throughout the media and media law playing field, and they can have cosy little meetings behind closed doors to decide what you and I say and what we put up on the internet to inform people. So it's very dangerous for YouTube to say we're happy to be regulated by them. Would be unbelievably dangerous.
So what about, okay, so is it is the issue the actual content that you have up on YouTube, or the fact that you're doing a live streaming broadcast?
Well, no, it's stream. It's not the live stream. It's where it is an on-demand service. So if you like, Ofcom provides the live element, but of course Ofcom at the moment is not digging its nose into the internet. But ATVOD, which is effectively a subsidiary of Ofcom, is digging its nose, its snout into the internet. But it is only going for television-like programs which are provided as an on-demand service.
Right.
So we've taken down UK Column Live in its optimum form, because we want to say to people, and they seem to be picking up the message, we are a gnat's whisker away from this group of individuals meeting behind closed doors, deciding what we can and cannot say when we're broadcasting, if we do it in a professional way, and we have opening credits, we have a producer, we have lower thirds and all those other things which are generally acknowledged to make a sort of visual broadcast look professional.
Okay, so if you moved your videos, for example, I'm just getting my head around this because I know you've been involved in it, but it's obviously new to us. If you moved your videos to Vimeo or Dailymotion or one of these other services, would that make a difference?
No, it wouldn't make any difference if that service ultimately allows people to pull them off. The only thing that makes a difference is if we produce the material, but it then goes out so that anybody could host that material. We of course are looking at this, that if we essentially we produce the programs, but then we say to people, anybody, you want to have a YouTube channel and put our material up, please do, then we are not responsible for that video on demand element, and therefore ATVOD has to get back in its box.
Okay, so, and what about if there was a service in Iceland, say, and you used, and the website address was, located in Iceland and the hosting was in Iceland and your videos were uploaded on that server in Iceland?
Well, that would work with the proviso that we would not be able to have any editorial or production responsibility for the site in Iceland, because ATVOD, which makes up its own rules as it goes along, simply says, well, you're initiating the service in the UK. We hold jurisdiction over the UK. Therefore, it doesn't matter if ultimately the on-demand is in Iceland. We can still regulate it.
Right. So if you had the MP4 videos available for download on the UK Column website, and then one of our Icelandic friends loaded it up on their website in Iceland, then it's out of your hands, really.
Well, this is absolutely true, and I will say, as a secret between all of us listening tonight, we are looking at our options very closely. So at the moment, we have made a point. We thought this was unbelievably dangerous to any of us, all of us, that are trying to get the truth out via alternative media, and in particular via media over the internet. And so we said, are we going to give in to these people? Absolutely not. They were, from the outset, they're waving a big stick because they can impose fines of up to £250,000. And as I say, if you sign up to them, okay, signing up only costs a few £100. But once you've done that, then they regulate you. They can pull you because they don't like what you say. They can decide that material. Let's say we're criticising the government. They decide that's hate speech. We get pulled.
Yeah.
They write a letter to YouTube, and we're shut down off YouTube. These are very dangerous people. So we said, what's the best way we can highlight the danger? We are going to show what we are very close, what's very close to happening, and that is people get completely shut down. So that's why we took the step to take off the usual UK Column Live news. And okay, we've introduced some a bit of black humour, but we want to ram home to people that we will be transmitting from cars on the move. We will, UK Column will, you will, anybody else will, if we allow these people to regulate without authority. Can I just use the expression, who the hell do these people think they are? If you look at the directors, they are on a huge gravy train where they can, the chief executive, a guy called Peter Johnson, history of the media industry, other directors, the chairman, Ruth Evans, history of the media industry. These people can increase their salaries and remuneration simply by finding more people to bully into signing up with ATVOD. So Peter Johnson, as the chief executive, he's already on £102,000 a year. And who selected him? Who put him in post?
Yeah.
This makes common purpose look like a pantomime.
Well, this reeks to me of the internet too, which is what they want to do, Brian. You know, we've talked about this on the show before, where the internet too will be a subscription-only service, and you'll have access to just websites that they dictate. And then what they'll do also is that when you want to set up your own website, you'll have to get some authorization from the local council, and they have to approve it before they let you. So if you're a business, they'll let you. But if you say, well, I'm setting up an alternative media website, they'll go, no, you're not.
Right, you are absolutely correct on this. And let's use an example of radio. So a lot of community radio stations around the country, FM, under the rules that they operate on, if you are a presenter in one of as a community radio presenter, you are not allowed to give your own view. You can host a program and you can have people on as your guests giving a view, but you as the presenter are not allowed to give any view. So you can see that the control is already there in the airwave transmissions, and now they want to do it on the internet. And yes, they are going to take us towards the point that some local authority person, again, democracy out the window, is going to say, well, yeah, you'd like to have open your mind internet radio, but I think you've got a political agenda, or you've been extreme. We're not going to allow you to broadcast. So this is very dangerous. And we UK column are saying to everybody we can now, please understand that this is the start, this is the thin end of the wedge of regulation of the internet. And I'll reinforce this by saying that ATVOD has made very big of the fact that it's there to protect children by preventing them being able to see online pornography. So they've imposed some pretty big fines on porn sites. Playboy TV got 35,000, Demand Adult got 65,000, and Strictly Broadband was fined 60,000. So here's ATVOD making its money on the back of the pornography industry, which it then says, well, hang on a minute, we're here to protect children. Now, what's been very interesting is that in the last few days, people involved with the adult industry have contacted the UK column to say, we, the adult entertainment industry, knew when we first saw ATVOD that it was not about regulating online pornography. It had a much darker agenda, and that was mission creep in order to start regulating anybody on the internet. And it appears that UK column has been chosen to be number one victim.
And I believe Enoch Crane has pulled his down as well.
Well, we of course were posting stuff for Ian, we will produce new arrangements. But here we are, you know. We've been doing a lot of work to expose fracking and what fracking is all about and show the demonstrations. And now as a result of ATVOD, that material has been pulled. Okay, maybe it's only going to be down for a couple of weeks. But let's come back. ATVOD is a private company with people selected. I don't know how they were selected, but they're riddled with vested interest because all of them have got multiple jobs within the media and media law industry. They meet behind closed doors, no members of the public present. We're not even present to see what's going on or to make representation to them, and they come back, they say we're guilty. This is unbelievably dangerous.
Well, if being a private company, it's in their interest to try and make money, and obviously using the Communications Act. I can see ISPs in Outer Mongolia doing a lot of very good business. You know,
That's true. Let's just take. We believe that a gentleman called Ian McBride led the team of 3 which produced the determination against the UK column. I believe that is correct. Now, whether or not it's correct, let's deal with some facts. This man retired from ITV in 2008 after 8 years of being managing editor and director of compliance. So he sits in judgment on us. But at the same time, he's also running a company called Media Compliance Services LLP, which is giving advice to media companies about compliance. And that is linked in with another company. Well, you can find it by www.rights.tv, which takes you to the Compact Media Group, which just happens to be working with BBC Worldwide. And this is providing advice on intellectual property rights. So this man is not independent in any shape or form, and yet we have been told, we're waiting to find out from ATVOD whether this is true, that he was one of their directors that sat in judgment on us. The chief executive of ATVOD, Peter Johnson, is on record in a telephone conversation of saying, well, of course, one of their jobs is to look after competition to the mainstream media. So a private company making judgments behind closed doors is acting to defend rotten organisations like the BBC, ITV, the major companies, from competition from people as frightening as us.
Yeah. Well, they're obviously getting concerned about things. They're obviously getting concerned. I mean, we just had Jim on earlier, Brian, and as you know, people are switching off the TVs in droves in America, and they're not buying the newspapers. I mean, I think the average age of people that watch the news over there is about 55 plus. And over here, it's the same. People are beginning to realise that the mainstream media or the lamestream media are just full of lies, and they're not telling the truth, and they're not reporting what's really going on, and people are switching off, and they're struggling. And so what they're saying is, right, okay, if we can't get more people, well then what we'll try and do is restrict the system. But I don't think they realise, the people who might come up with the idea to try and restrict the system, but the internet is a global system. And I think they forget the likes of, there are countries that are outside the jurisdiction of Europe, and who'll be more than happy to host websites and host video and material, and you could put it up there. So, I'm not too sure exactly what they think they're going to be able to do when there's some countries that they won't be able to do anything with. I mean, Russia, for one, Eastern European countries, hosting services over there.
Well, I totally agree with this, and they are frightened. This is a sign, I agree, that, the establishment is frightened. What are they frightened about? They're frightened that more and more people are not only tuning in to alternative forms of media, but of course more and more ordinary people are providing that media themselves. So we can see the establishment getting frightened. Mike and I obviously had a chat about the whole thing fairly early on over a cup of coffee, and you say, why have they gone for us? And we think they've gone for the UK column because of the style that we've been presenting our news and the fact that we've been really getting in the faces of the politicians and pulling apart how they're doing stuff and who's involved. So we've been very factual in what we've been doing. It was the UK column that did all of the initial exposure of Common Purpose, and what happened, the mainstream media eventually picked up on that, and that blew open Leveson. And I will tell you there are connections between the Media Standards Trust and ATVOD. So UK column, instrumental in getting the mainstream press to understand the dangers of common purpose, the Media Standards Trust and the Leveson inquiry. We've also stuck to our guns over the Holly Gregg case, and I can tell you, and I'm going to keep saying, that case real. The Scottish government spending over £2 million trying to silence Robert Greene and anybody else talking about what really happened. We've got reason to believe that the Scottish government was involved in this attempt to close us down. And we were told by a very, very good contact before the last election. This was somebody that was close to the Tories' campaign office, that there'd been a discussion in which David Cameron said, in relation to the UK column and similar outlets, that when we get into power, we will regulate against people like that. And I think this is what we've now started to see. Cameron, Miliband, Nick Clegg, they know the writings on the wall. We and many other people are talking about the whole of those three parties as criminal affairs protecting paedophiles. And that is what I believe, and I am going to keep saying that. And this has now started to frighten the pants off these people. So what do? Oh God, we've got to shut them up.
Well, I think there is light at the end of the tunnel there, Brian. I'm sure you know, and I'd be more than happy to talk to you. Myself and Steve talk to you off air, and Mike, I'm sure you probably covered enough bases, but there's other things that you could possibly do as well, and to look at different ways to actually do this. I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. But it's just a pity. But there you go. That goes to show you are having an effect on the government and what you're doing, because they are running scared. And we had Jim on earlier, and Jim was saying that the plans for these people who are in power, they're way behind their plans, because people are beginning to wake up, realise what's going on, not watching the propaganda, pulling away from it. And people are going to the internet to look at the real news, and they're moving away from the media, and they're not being mind controlled by the television sets, which is great to see. Programs like yourself and what you, Mike and Louise do is fantastic, and it's a brilliant show, great information. I think one thing you said earlier I'd just like to comment on. Myself and Steve try not have an opinion on certain subjects, because we do think it's down to the listeners to form their opinion, and we don't want to give our opinion which might influence their opinion. But on saying that, the whole idea is that we get people on like yourself and Jim and everybody else, and give their opinion on what they've done and their background, and and then the listeners can decide from there. And sometimes it's very hard. You have to bite your tongue and say, well, this is what I think, because we do feel strongly about certain subjects that need to be sorted. But hopefully, somebody just posted there in the chat room saying, isn't taking down your site playing into their hands? Well,
the answer to that is absolutely no, because in stopping the normal style of broadcasts, we've had a phenomenal response from people, and we've just been doing some interviews with Pete Santilli and Patrick Henningsen, and we've got more interviews planned stateside, because people in America are paying attention to this. So no, we wanted to do something that would really make people think, and that's why we've done it. We're not disappearing, we're simply putting a line in the sand, and we are screaming from the rooftops for people to wake up. And just on this subject, on this issue of opinions, I know what you're saying, and I'm going to say with a smile on my face, I don't disagree. However, one of the things that is being pushed through the mainstream media, and has been for many years, is that there are two sides to every story. Now, this is a very dangerous little expression, because we are now in an age where there's only one thing that matters, and that is what is true. It's to do with what is truth and what is not truth. And okay, there's going to be times when we're dealing with topics where the truth can't be proved one way or another, and then people are putting opinions or they're putting research across, and to promote that in a balanced way, I totally agree is the right thing to do. But when we're dealing with information where factually it can be proven what the situation is, then to my mind there's only one way to go. You've got to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah, totally. I totally agree with you. What we find, though, is that there's a lot of opinions on certain subjects, and it depends on where the guest is coming from, you know, that from that side. And I totally agree. The truth is the truth is the truth, even if one person's only saying it. What kind of muddies the water is when you have 5 people who think they have the truth.
Yes, I accept that.
And this is where you kind of discernment has to kick in. Just touching base on what's going on with the ATVOD situation. I don't know whether you heard about David Icke leaving the People's Voice. Do you think there's anything sinister going on there?
Well, the immediate answer is I don't know exactly what's gone on, but the thing that I've picked up from, you know, being on the sidelines and watching it is that there's definitely been a lot of angst and infighting and egos. I think this is one of the things that we are all really going to have to get a grip of, because we see it in local groups. I'm sure it's happened in Ireland, or still happening in Ireland. It's happening over here. It's happening in the States, that where people are beginning to form themselves and to try and do something, in come the egos, in come the big troublemakers. Yeah. And in next to no time, there's a big firefight and everybody's split up. And of course, the other side loves this. So I don't know exactly what's going on with the People's Voice. I know David Icke seems to have moved away from it. That's what his statement he recently posted says. I know there appears now to be a shortage of money, but I don't know anything more than that.
I agree with you that I reckon, and I feel that it's got to do with egos. And we're always saying, and we've had people on the show who we've talked about, we have to move away from ego and ignorance and move towards humility and wisdom. That's our goal. Yes. That's our path in life for everybody. You know, because the world's going to be a much better place if we have humility and wisdom. Unfortunately, ego does get involved, and, you know, OYM has always kind of been, we've worked kind of with other groups, as you know, Brian, but OYM has fundamentally myself and Steve. And it's a reason why it's been like that, because we know that groups can be infiltrated and we know that egos get involved, and we are concerned about that. So you have to be very careful. So getting groups together is a great thing, as long as people park the ego outside. And if anybody in the group is pulling the group away from where they should be or anything negative, well then, unfortunately, fingers have to be pointed, because that person's pulling the group in the wrong way. Why are they doing that, and why are they being negative? So, you know, they're the questions I'd be asking for any group that's together. You know, if somebody's in the group and that's happening, then you have to ask the question, and I'm sure you've come across that yourself.
Yeah, well, totally agree with that. The other bit, we get call after call every week. We are taking calls from people, and I'm sure you guys are as well, from people who've had their property taken from them, people who've had their children taken from them, people who've had businesses stolen, people who've been beaten up in police stations, people really suffering and hurting. That's the reality of our society today, and we're dealing with that. And then we see people, I think they are still playing a game. They think to be researching or listening to programs over the internet where people are talking about the new world order coming. It's entertainment. Well, it isn't entertainment, because what is coming, unless we all get to grips with it and stop it, what's coming is the camps. And with that, everything that we've seen in history is coming, people are going to disappear in black cars. 600 people disappeared in black cars in UK in the last 12 months. We're going to see internment camps. We're going to see political murders. We're already seeing the British government use torture and condoning torture. Yeah. This is the reality. And for people to be playing games, if I sound a bit motivated tonight, I assure you I am. For people to be squabbling, infighting, and you know, I'm not going to play with them because they don't believe in this sort of thing. We've really got to get our act together. People don't get on all the time. That's true. And, you know, select people you enjoy working with. That takes some of the weight off. But we are fighting callous, vicious killers. That's what the British government comprises of at the moment. Internment camps are well on their way. We see the police here fully armed, automatic weapons, tasers, CS gas. They're ready to go. And we've still got people squabbling or posting the most ridiculous stuff, attacking other people in the movement.
Yeah.
We've got to get over this.
Yeah, I totally agree. We've 5 minutes left there, Brian, but I totally agree. This infighting and this attacking, we all have to find, if you're really interested in doing something about it, we all find the common ground and then we work together on it. I don't have time, and Steve's the same. We don't have time for this infighting. That's just childish. Grow up, find the common ground and work together. This information has to get out because we're all going to be affected. I mean, we get, like you, Brian, we get phone calls. We just had an email during the show. Somebody's contacted us on an email asking us he's going to lose his house and he wants some advice on what to do and everything else. So we'll be getting back to him shortly. And we, like you, we get phone calls and there's things that we're trying to do in the background, which I'm not going to talk about now on air because there's nothing definite at the moment, but we're trying to put something together, myself and another individual, regarding the whole eviction process. But we will, so when the information comes about, when it's something sorted, we'll be in touch. But we have 4 minutes left. Brian, before, one quick question, Steve, okay?
Yeah, I have a quick question, Brian, and it came in earlier. I didn't think it was relevant to when you were speaking about the way kind of the ATVOD was investigating you. But this question came in, and I said I'd ask it, but it's from a listener called Trent. I'm guessing Trent is new to the chat, and he's wondering what's Brian's thoughts on Kevin Annett and the ITCCS.
Right, I support Kevin Annett. I'm convinced his story is true. I will say it like that because there's been 1 or 2 people attacking Kevin Annett. If you look into the background of his story, what he's endured in trying to expose the massacre of these Canadian Indian children, massacre and abuse of these Canadian Indian children, absolutely correct. I support what he's doing for common law. The only bit that I wouldn't support immediately is we don't need in UK good grief, what's the word? Suggesting we should get rid of the monarchy. The people in the position of monarchy at the moment are the problem, not the concept of having a monarchy. Yeah, republic, that was the word. So I am a total supporter. I think he's endured a huge amount, and the fact that Theresa May blocked him from coming into the country says she's very frightened of him. So he gets my vote. Okay, brilliant. Well, listen, Brian, we're just to stay with us there for a minute, Brian. We're just going to finish up, but do you want to give us a quick, give us your website address and any contact details where people can get in touch with UK Column? Right, well, the website's www.ukcolumn.org. And if you want to get in touch, it's just editor@ukcolumn.org. Brilliant stuff. I think what we'll have to do, Brian, is we'll do a full show with maybe with yourself and Mike or yourself and Louise come on and we'll do a full interview because in a few weeks' time things are changing so fast. So if you don't mind doing that, I'll be in touch with you and we'll book something in and we'll do, because this is serious stuff. This ATVOD and what's going on is going to affect an awful lot of people. And I think the more heads up and the more we talk about it, the better, and we get it out to the public. But listen, thanks a lot for coming on. Just stay with us there
And on next week's show, it's to be confirmed, but we're hoping to have David Hugo Boyle on a part 2. We had David on there a few weeks ago, and it was a brilliant interview with loads of information. And part 2 will be hopefully next week, if we get David on. If not, we'll always have somebody good. You know that. You know what we're like. We always get a good guest on. So looking forward to next week with David as well. The other thing was Vin. You know what? Who's on with Vin?
Just himself.
Just himself.
And that's good enough.
No problem at all. Okay, for myself, Alan James, take care, stay safe. If you have any news, let us know. Oh, and a quick announcement from Steve, from Kim up in Donegal. Yeah,
quick announcement. There's going to be a talk by Alana Moore on Monday, July 7th at 7:30 to 9:30 in the PM. And it's going to be covering electromagnetic fields, dangers to health and Wi-Fi, mobile phones and smart meters, dirty electricities, and way to avoid or reduce such problems. The venue for that is going to be Quigley's Point Community Centre in Inishowen in County Donegal. Just turn up on the evening. Donations will just to cover expenses. Again, that's Monday, July 7th, 7:30 to 9:30.
Brilliant stuff. All right, take care of yourselves. Alan James saying, have a safe week. We'll catch you next week.
Okay, and for myself, Stephen George, as well, have a great one, and we'll do it all again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.